NASDAQ, S&P, the Dow Jones, the markets across the board today got vaporized. It's Monday, May 13th, 2019. Before we start today's video, please share this video, please subscribe, and please make sure you hit the bell notification down below so that you are alerted with the newest videos. A truly ugly day on Wall Street today. You know, at some point, this bulletproof euphoria that people have with these markets is going to become exhausted. As I'm watching these markets disintegrate in front of my eyes today, as I'm watching this meltdown take place, I watch the razzle and dazzle that the media, that these analysts and correspondents give of why you and I should be investing in these markets today. You know, they were actually saying, don't worry about how deep the water is. Don't worry about what's under the water. You just need to get in the water. You need to get in these markets today. At the same time where we're witnessing a global slowdown taking place, as we witness continued civil unrest across the globe take place, as we witness all-time corporate debt highs at levels unheard of, as we witness the retail apocalypse, as we witness the real estate markets across the country, many of them falling off of a cliff now, the auto sector dying. As we're witnessing all this, they're telling you and I not to fear, don't worry, the water's fine, jump in, get in these markets today. You know, when I watch this stuff, it just reinforces the principle that every one of you, including myself, need to get our preparations in order before this financial crisis reaches a point of no return. This crisis is coming. It is, I believe, already started. And this narrative that they're giving everybody that everything's okay, in fact, everything is awesome, it's getting very, very old, especially when I'm watching the last few days, watching these markets getting devastated, and yet they continue to sell us the same propaganda. Everything's awesome, GDP growth, everything is good, but they just don't want to remind you about, you know, the fraudulent low interest rates, the corporate buybacks, the quantitative easing, and all the artificial injections that have taken place to keep this dying patient on the table breathing. And that's all it's doing is breathing, and it's barely breathing. And at some point, this economy, this dying patient is no longer going to breathe. And this is why I reiterate this all the time, why I repeat this. You need to be getting prepared, because this cannot be fixed. We are past the point of no return, and I believe America is going to suffer very severe damage. Let's talk a little bit about what happened today. Dow Jones was down. It was down over 700 points at one point. It closed down 617 points. In the last few days, we've lost, I believe, well over 1,000 points. 9 days ago, we were at record highs. This is how quick things can happen. Imagine what happens when this market starts losing 1,000 points a day and not 1,000 points over 2 or 3 days. What kind of panic, what kind of crisis are we going to see when we wake up and we start watching these markets really melt down? People just think nothing bad can happen. They just believe that America is immune to an economic crisis or an economic collapse, and I'm here to tell you that is the farthest thing from the truth. Again, the media is telling you that the economy is fine. Again, they're not telling you about why it's still alive, because of quantitative easing, the corporate buybacks, the low interest rates, and a multitude of other little tricks and scams that they've done to keep this whole house of cards propped up. They never want to tell you this. They never want to talk about household debt, corporate debt. They don't want to talk about the federal debt. They don't want to tell you these things because they don't want to scare you. But in all reality, this economy, this patient is very, very sick. And as soon as they can no longer inject this patient with adrenaline, we are in a world of serious, serious pain. Most people's lives are going to be turned upside down. Again, another reason why You should not be putting all your trust and faith in banks, financial institutions, or the government. This is why you need to be preparing. This is why you need to be your own central bank. This is why you need to be an independent, free-thinking human being that can think for yourself, take care of your security, and have real money set aside. Another reason why you should have gold and silver, precious metals, to start preserving and ensuring your wealth. Ladies and gentlemen, today is just another canary in the coal mine. If you cannot see how fragile this system is, how quickly these markets can be devastated, and the impact that it's going to have on your lives, you are drinking the Kool-Aid. Not only are we seeing the markets rocked, we are now getting into a heated trade war with China, and this could have huge ramifications. I truly believe that China has ripped us off for decades, and it is time for America to stand up. But like any other war, you're going to feel the pain. Whether this was a hot, physical war or a trade war, you're going to feel the pain, and you're going to have to make sacrifices. Otherwise, China continues to become bigger, stronger, and more powerful, continuing to steal intellectual property from America, continuing to rob us. And at some point, we're going to be subservient to China if we do not stand up, because China is trying to become the world superpower. I think we have to be very prepared that we may see higher inflation coming to America. China now is imposing tariffs on $60 billion of U.S. goods. This will go into effect June 1st. Another thing that is concerning is, yet again today, we saw bond yields. We saw the 3-month and the 10-year invert yet again. Another warning sign that something is very, very wrong here. We may see, as I said earlier, inflation starting to tick up. We're going to see prices of certain products ticking up. China may not buy agricultural products now from the United States, or they may buy less. So this is going to jeopardize our farmers. On top of the terrible weather and flooding that's been taking place in the Midwest, the Chinese say that they may reduce Boeing orders. They could start dumping U.S. treasuries, which would push up U.S. rates higher and strengthen the yuan. They could also start dumping U.S. stocks and real estate. This is, again, why I believe it's so imperative to be preparing for tough times. Who would have thought a couple years ago we would now be in a warm trade war with China? This could escalate into a very hot trade war, and this could really affect a lot of households here in America. So again, if you haven't started preparing, if these aren't enough warning signs to wake you up to start preparing, this is just a China trade war. There are a multitude of other events that could take place at any second. We have cells from Iran all throughout America here. What if we saw terrorism take place here? What if these cells were activated here in America on top of this economic slowdown that we're seeing, on top of a trade war? People, you got to really start thinking with an open mind of the possibilities of what could go wrong. You don't drive your car. You don't leave the house with your car without paying the car insurance. You cannot go through life without ensuring your wealth and being prepared for black swan events, economic turmoil, an economic collapse, a slowdown, a dollar collapse, an EMP. There is a multitude of things that could happen. Let's talk a little bit more about what happened today. Dow Jones was down 2.4%, S&P down 2.4%, NASDAQ down 3.4%. Apple was nearly down 6% today. Nobody is immune from this stuff. Apple, Caterpillar, and Intel were all down more than 10% in the last 6 trading days. Boeing, Caterpillar, 3M, Goldman Sachs, and Apple have all fallen into bear market territory today, with more than 20% declines from the recent highs. So as I'm watching the markets being vaporized right before my eyes today, and the media telling everybody they should be buying in, not talking about what's happening in real estate, not talking about what's happening in retail, Not talking about how car dealers, okay? I mean, all the car makers, all the manufacturers today got annihilated. Let's talk about the car dealers. They're scrambling to deal with the 4.2 million unsold new cars that are sitting on lots across America. Abandoned factories and shopping malls and undeveloped parcels of land have become parking lots of new cars as dealers try to figure out what to do with them. 4.2 million cars sitting on lots, sitting on parcels of land, sitting in old shopping malls, sitting in abandoned buildings, wherever they can put these things. For 8 years, interest rates remained very low and allowed these dealers to carry vast inventories of cars at very little cost. Rates are now on the rise, and the same dealers are struggling to the max with all these cars and trucks and SUVs, and now dealing and struggling with the costs to store all of this inventory, and it's making the situation worse. I was thinking about an article that I read yesterday on Zero Hedge, and it was talking about how many adults here in the US play video games and how much money they spend on video games. And it made me think about how unprepared this country really is, how unprepared the majority of people here in America are for an economic collapse, for an EMP, for a dollar collapse, for terrorism, for civil unrest, how unprepared the sheep really are. This article, I'll just kind of go over it really quickly for you. Nearly 65% of US adults, that's more than 164 million people, play video games. Now, there's nothing wrong if you play video games, but we all know these people who literally are addicted to video games. That's all they do, hours and hours out of the day playing video games. They're, you know, in their 40s, their 50s, their 30s, and all they do is play video games. They have no social life. All their money, all their time is devoted to video games. 46% of video game players now, adults in this country, are female. A staggering $43.4 billion was spent on video games in 2018. It blows my mind when people write to me and say, I don't have any money, I can't buy an ounce of silver. The problem that I see today is we have adult men and women in this country spending too much money on video games and too much money smoking dope. My advice would be start cutting out the dope, cutting out your video games, and maybe you will have a little bit of money to actually start acquiring some assets like gold or silver. You know, it's amazing if you start cutting out the Starbucks, you start cutting out going out to dinner, maybe cutting out the weekend trips, you'd be amazed how much wealth you could be acquiring. Dope in video games is not going to get you ahead. It's not going to build you wealth. What is going to build you wealth is making sacrifices, paying off debt, and actually acquiring hard assets like gold and silver. I am not a financial planner. I am not a financial advisor. I've never pretended to be one, but I'm going to give you a financial tip today that is never going to be worth zero and could possibly save your life. I read an article the other day. I forgot what site it was on, but I'm going to kind of paraphrase through it. But this is an incredible asset. It's never going to be worth zero, and it could preserve and ensure your life, and that is ammo. Here's a couple reasons of why ammo is such a great investment and why it is one of my #1 tips. In a world where everything is virtual BS, ammo needs no software updates to function. Ammo functions on the law of physics, not a program. And when bad times come, when dangerous times come, reliability has tremendous value. And again, ammo never needs a software update. Ammunition is EMP proof. Ammo has multiple uses: bartering, hunting for food, self-defense. Ammo is more valuable than gold in an SHTF. Ask yourself this. This is a great scenario right here. If some evil people, some thugs, some dirtbags, just terrible evil people were knocking your door down and they were coming in to do bad things to your wife, your kids, to your mom, to anybody in your family, to you, to do bad, evil things, to take human life, or to take your assets. Ask yourself this: what's going to be more important? What would you want? You want a can of beans? A can of beans. B, would you like a bottle of water? C, would you like precious metals? Or D, an AR with a mag full of ammo? Now, if you didn't answer D, you probably shouldn't be watching this video. And the last reason you want to be investing in ammunition, and this is no disrespect to the police or law enforcement, but the police, for the most part, are considered the least proficient firearms operators around. Now, there are exceptions. There are people that come out of the military, in special forces, and there are just some great people in law enforcement who practice and are super proficient. But these are exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, a majority of people in these departments are not very proficient. And so you cannot always rely on them coming to your aid. U.S. courts have already repeatedly ruled that police officers have no legal duty whatsoever to protect citizens from violence committed by others. Do not rely on the police. You should be more trained and more proficient with a firearm than the police. I'm going to end this video, but before I do, I just want to make a couple quick points. I believe right now it is time to make sure that every one of you get your priorities in order. What we watched today is just another example of things to come. This is just the beginning. I truly believe things will get much worse. That is not to say that tomorrow the markets rally back. They quite possibly could. It's not to say that next week we could come to an agreement with China and the trade war is over. That could happen. But remember, China is a communist country, and I truly believe once you turn your back on China, they will stab you in the back. They are not to be trusted. That being said, every one of us needs to be preparing for what is to come. I believe most people out there watching this video are awake. There are some people out there who are not. If you truly cannot see by now what is happening as we witness a retail apocalypse, we witness what's happening in the auto sector, the automakers getting devastated, real estate being devastated throughout most of the country. There are exceptions. 7 million people, delinquent 90 days plus on auto loans, people living paycheck to paycheck, corporate debt at all-time highs, all the manipulation that's taken place in these markets, which has influenced this economy, which is a total illusion. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready, because you are about ready to see the biggest show on earth take place. And unfortunately, there are going to be many people not prepared for it, and many people who are going to be casualties economically and physically when this takes place. Get off the drugs, get off the pharmaceuticals, get off the dope. Get in better shape mentally, physically, and spiritually, and start getting ready, because I think most of you know something evil this way comes, and it's getting very, very close.